The old farmhouse sat at the edge of the countryside, quiet and still, its weathered walls holding the secrets of many seasons gone by. Most people passed it without a second glance. It looked like any other aging homes, lightly forgotten, slightly sad, but no one knew that behind it, hidden beneath a tangle of vines and weeds, something was alive. Beyond the shed, past a leaning fence and under a crumbling oak tree, was an old metal kennel. The bars were rusted, the gate stuck shut from years of disuse. No one had checked it in months, maybe even longer. It had once housed tools or maybe chickens, but now it held something entirely different. Inside were 2 German shepherds, both pregnant, both trapped. They hadn't started there. Weeks earlier, they had been living in a different part of the property, with their former owner. But when that person suddenly packed up and moved out, the dogs had been left behind. No food, no water, no plan. They had either wandered into the kennel looking for shelter, or had been locked in before the departure. No one knew. All that mattered now was that they were alone, and time was running out. The dogs, once strong and proud, now looked thinner by the day. Their coats had dulled, their eyes sunken. They huddled together for warmth during the cold nights, and whimpered softly through the bars during the day. The younger one had already started nesting, using scraps of straw and dry leaves that blew in through the broken side of the kennel. The older one paced sometimes, then lay down in defeat, her body heavy with life. From the road, there was no sign of them. The tall weeds had grown like curtains around the cage, muffling any sound. The whimpers barely escaped. The property had been listed for sale, but weeks passed with no showings. In that silence, the dogs were prisoners of an accident, victims, not of cruelty, but of neglect, and no one was coming. Or so it seemed. On the other side of the property line lived a young couple with their toddler. Noah. They had moved in just months earlier, excited for the peace of rural life. They loved the wide fields, the morning mist, and the quiet that city life never offered. Their backyard ended just a few feet from the overgrown stretch hiding the kennel. But again, no one knew it was there. Noah had just started walking a few weeks before. He was wobbly on his feet, but bold in his curiosity. Everything fascinated him: the wind in the grass, the bugs on the porch, the smell of old wood and dirt. And while his parents kept a close eye on him, toddlers have a way of slipping out of sight for just long enough. That morning, the sun had just risen. Noah's mother was folding laundry near the back window, and his father was inside making breakfast. Noah had been playing with toy blocks on the porch, humming to himself. But something caught his attention: a sound, faint and distant. A whimper, a cry. He looked up, eyes wide and alert. And then, without hesitation, he waddled off toward the trees. He didn't know fear. He didn't know rules. He just knew there was something that needed him. As the wind rustled the tall grass, Noah pushed forward, his tiny hands brushing aside weeds as tall as his shoulders. The sound grew louder, still soft, but enough to guide him. What he found at the end of that trail wasn't just a pair of frightened animals. It was the beginning of something none of them could have ever expected. Noah had never walked this far from the house before, but to him, it wasn't far at all. His little legs marched forward with determination, swaying slightly with each step. He didn't see the world the way adults did. He didn't see danger or decay. He saw sunlight streaming through the trees. He saw butterflies darting above the grass. And he followed the sound that called to something gentle in his young heart. The path was uneven, hidden beneath years of fallen leaves and broken branches. The deeper he went, the quieter everything else became. The birds were still. The wind slowed. Only the faint whimpering remained. And Noah, in his small way, pressed on without hesitation. Then, as the trees thinned, just a bit, he saw it. A strange shape sat under a drooping oak tree, metal bars, covered in rust and shadow. Vines twisted around the corners, trying to reclaim the structure for nature. Inside, 2 shapes moved. Noah blinked. The dogs rose slightly as he appeared, unsure of what they were seeing. Their ears stood up, their bodies tense. They hadn't seen a person in Dazor, was it longer? They didn't know. All they knew was that someone had come. Someone small. Noah stepped closer. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He just stared, his wide eyes full of something the dogs hadn't felt in a long time: kindness. He stopped just in front of the cage and dropped to his knees in the dirt. He tilted his head, fascinated by the way the dogs moved inside the kennel. The larger one had her body wrapped around the smaller, almost protectively. The smaller one stared at him, panting quietly, her ribs slightly visible beneath her coat. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then, Noah did something that would terrify most parents. He reached out. His tiny fingers stretched through the bars, not with force or fear, but curiosity. The dogs twitched. The larger one growled, one slow and soft. More warning than threat. But Noah didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled to the dogs. This made no sense. Grown humans always came with shouting, or noise, or loud boots. This one, he had no words, no commands, just a soft laugh, and a hand that didn't strike but offered. The older dog slowly stepped forward. She sniffed once, then again. Her instincts told her to protect, but something else told her. This little thing wasn't dangerous. She pressed her nose gently to his hand. Noah giggled, delighted by the wet touch. He sat down, legs crossed, right there in the dirt. He picked up a dry leaf and held it out like it was a treat. The smaller dog, curious now, crawled forward and sniffed too. She wagged her tail just once weak, but real. It was the first friendly gesture they had made in days. Noah kept playing. He didn't understand what trapped meant. He didn't see pregnant dogs or abandonment. He just saw friends. He babbled softly, as toddlers do, making little nonsense sounds. That somehow calmed the dogs further. He passed them a pebble. He clapped when they sniffed it. His joy was infectious. Time passed. The dogs lay back down, eyes on Noah, no longer fearful. Something strange had happened, something none of them could explain. Somehow, in the middle of fear, hunger, and uncertainty, they had found peace in a toddler who didn't even know what he'd done. Back at the house, Noah's mother was still folding laundry. She glanced up and noticed the porch was empty. Her heart skipped. She called his name. Once, twice, silence, then panic took hold. She dropped the basket and ran outside, unaware that, just beyond the trees, her baby boy had already made history by simply listening to a sound the rest of the world had chosen to ignore. Noah's mother, Emma, raced through the backyard, calling his name louder now. Her voice echoed through the trees. Her feet crushed wildflowers and kicked up dirt as she searched behind bushes and around the garden shed. Every second of silence made her heart beat faster. She knew toddlers wandered, but this felt different. Too quiet. Too long. Noah. She cried again, panic tightening her chest. Then she heard something. A faint giggle. Not far. Emma spun toward the sound, sprinting past a pile of old fence posts and into the overgrowth at the edge of the property. The weeds scratched her arms as she pushed through, and then she froze. There he was. Her baby boy, sitting in the dirt, smiling. But he wasn't alone. Emma's breath caught as her eyes locked onto the two large dogs, just feet away from her son. They were inside a rusted kennel, but that detail didn't register at first. All she saw were two full-grown German shepherds alert, watching and far too close to her toddler. Her motherly instinct screamed to run, to snatch him up, to protect. But something held her back. Noah wasn't scared. He was calm, happy, even. And the dogs weren't attacking. They weren't growling. They were watching Jim intently. Yes, but not with aggression. More like wonder. The larger shepherd stood up slowly. Her belly swayed with the weight of unborn pups. She walked toward the bars of the cage and lowered her head. Emma tensed, ready to scream, but then the dog did something she didn't expect. She licked Noah's hand. Once, gently. Noah giggled again, looking over his shoulder and spotting his mom for the first time. He grinned, held up a little rock like it was a trophy, and shouted, "Mama." Emma stepped forward, slowly, cautiously. The dogs shifted their eyes to her, but didn't react aggressively. Their tails didn't wag, but they also didn't rise in threat. It was as if they understood they'd been seen. Finally, Emma crouched beside Noah and scooped him into her arms. He squirmed and babbled, reaching back toward the cage, clearly not finished with his visit. But Emma held him tight, her heart racing. She looked at the dogs. They looked back. It was only now, with her closer, that she saw how thin they were, how tired. Their fur was matted with dirt. Their eyes, though sharp, carried exhaustion. And then Emma noticed something else. Both dogs were visibly pregnant. Her hand instinctively moved to her phone in her pocket. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know who would believe it. But she knew this was serious. She took a photo of the kennel and dialed the local animal rescue. Her voice trembled as she explained the situation: the dogs, the cage, her son's unexpected discovery. The dispatcher on the other end assured her someone would come immediately. As she hung up, she looked down at Noah, who had rested his head on her shoulder, already calm again. She kissed his forehead, then turned back toward the dogs. The smaller shepherd had curled into a ball at the back of the cage, her breathing shallow. The larger one lay near the front, eyes still on Emma, not pleading, not demanding, just waiting. And Emma realized something. These dogs weren't dangerous. They were desperate, and somehow, her baby boy, the smallest, gentlest soul in the world, had walked into that desperation and offered peace. Emma stood there in silence, the warm wind rustling the grass around her. The story wasn't over yet. Help was coming. But the moment, this one quiet moment between two abandoned dogs and a child too young to judge or fear, would never be forgotten. The animal rescue truck arrived faster than Emma expected. Within 20 minutes, 2 volunteers and a local vet tech named Carla stepped out and followed Emma through the winding trail that led to the hidden kennel. Emma held Noah close as they approached, unsure of how the dogs would react to strangers. Carla, a seasoned professional with a gentle way about her, crouched down several feet from the kennel and spoke softly. "Hey girls," she said, as if greeting old friends. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" The dogs didn't bark. They didn't growl. They just looked at her, tired but alert. The larger one stood slowly, placing herself between the smaller shepherd and the front of the cage. She didn't look aggressive. She looked like a mother. Carla studied them closely. "They're both pregnant," she said quietly, "and way too thin. But they're not feral. Someone raised them. Someone they trusted. Until they were left here." Emma swallowed hard. "My son found them. He was sitting right there when I found him. They let him touch them." Carla turned and stared, blinking slowly. Emma nodded, still processing it herself. He wasn't scared. They weren't either. It was like they knew. Like they trusted him. Carla didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said, "That's rare. Very rare." She stepped closer to the cage, slowly reaching out with the back of her hand. The larger dog sniffed it once, then stepped back. Not aggressive, just cautious. Carla nodded, confirming what she already suspected. "They're scared, not dangerous." One of the volunteers, Jake, tried the latch on the kennel. It didn't budge. It's rusted shut. "We'll need bolt cutters," Carla said. "We're not dragging them out. We're going to do this gently." While Jake returned to the truck to grab tools, Carla turned to Emma. "They're holding it together now because they've had no choice. But once that door opens, anything could happen. We have to be ready for panic, for flight, even for labor." Emma looked at the dogs again. She could barely believe they were the same creatures she had feared just an hour ago. Noah squirmed in her arms, trying to peek back at the kennel. He waved one tiny hand in the air and made a soft woof sound. The larger shepherd's ears perked. She walked forward and sat down just behind the bars. Her eyes locked onto Noah's. No barking, no movement. Just a quiet stare, full of something Emma couldn't name. Maybe trust. Maybe hope. Jake returned with the bolt cutters and began working on the rusted latch. It snapped with a loud clank, and for a brief second, everyone tensed. The door creaked open a few inches. The dogs didn't move. Carla stepped back and waited, giving them the choice. And then, slowly, the larger dog stepped out. Her paws touched the dirt with hesitation, but she didn't run. She didn't growl. She simply stood and looked at everyone. Then she turned and glanced back at the kennel. The second shepherd remained inside, curled up. "She's weak," Carla whispered. "We need to carry her." Carla approached carefully, wrapping her arms around the smaller dog with practiced care. The shepherd whimpered once, but didn't resist. As they walked back toward the truck, Noah stretched one arm toward them, pointing and cooing. The larger dog followed close behind, her eyes on him the entire time. "She's not leaving him," Jake muttered. Carla smiled softly. "Maybe she thinks he saved them. Maybe he did." Emma looked at her son, who was now resting against her shoulder with a thumb in his mouth, completely unaware of the role he had played. And in that quiet walk back toward the rescue truck, no one spoke loudly. No one needed to, because something incredible had already happened. The fear had been broken by the smallest person there. The animal rescue truck rolled slowly down the gravel path, carrying 2 pregnant dogs who had spent too long in silence. Inside the climate-controlled cabin, soft bedding lined the crates, and the smaller shepherd lay curled tightly, her breathing shallow but steady. The larger one stood restlessly, watching the movement outside the window, her ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound. Carla sat between them, her hands resting gently on the edge of the crate doors. "You're safe now," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if the dogs understood the words or if they simply sensed the shift. Meanwhile, Emma had followed in her own car, Noah safely strapped in his car seat in the back. He was quiet now, blinking sleepily, but still gripping the same small rock he had offered the dogs earlier that morning. Emma glanced at him in the rear-view mirror. He didn't know how much he had changed their lives, or hers. They reached the shelter by mid-morning. It was modest, set just outside of town, surrounded by open fields and warm sunlight. It didn't smell like fear. It smelled like hay, biscuits, and hope. As Carla and her team carried the dogs inside, a few other staff members paused in quiet awe. It wasn't every day two bonded, pregnant dogs came in together, especially ones who had survived such abandonment, and still held gentleness in their eyes. They were given their own quiet recovery room, away from the noise of the main kennels. Clean blankets were laid out. Bowls of fresh water and high-nutrient food were placed within reach. A vet arrived shortly after and began examining the smaller shepherd, noting signs of early labor. "She's close," he said gently. "Maybe a day or two. She's underweight, but her vitals are stable. With rest and care, she should pull through." The larger shepherd never left her side. She paced when the vet touched her companion. She sat beside the crate when the other rested. She refused to eat unless the smaller dog did too. Carla watched them, taking notes, but more than that, she felt something stirring. She had seen hundreds of dogs come through the shelter, broken ones, angry ones, fearful ones. But this pair was different. They weren't just survivors, they were protectors of each other. Sisters, maybe. Or just souls that had chosen to stay together through it all. Later that afternoon, Emma stopped by with a small basket of donated supplies, blankets, old towels, and 2 squeaky toys Noah had insisted they bring. Noah toddled into the shelter, holding Carla's hand. The larger shepherd, resting in the corner, stood the moment she saw him. Her tail swayed low and slow, cautious, but warm. Carla looked at Emma. "Would you like to come see them?" Emma hesitated. "Only if it's okay." Carla smiled. "I think they've been waiting." Noah walked in first, wobbling just a bit, still gripping his toy rock. He made a soft cooing sound as he approached the dogs. The larger shepherd stepped closer, eyes locked on his dish. She lowered her head and gently nudged his hand, almost like she remembered, and maybe she did. Emma stood back, watching as her child knelt beside the dog who had been caged and forgotten, now licking his hand like an old friend. The smaller shepherd lifted her head too, slowly, carefully. She gave a quiet whine, and the larger dog returned to her side. "They trust him," Carla said softly. "More than anyone." Emma felt something shift in her chest. Maybe this wasn't a one-time rescue. Maybe it was the start of something bigger, something none of them could have predicted. As the sun dipped low outside, and the shelter settled into evening calm, 2 dogs lay curled in safety. A toddler sat on the floor near them, humming to himself, and a mother stood in the doorway, watching a miracle unfold right in front of her. The shelter fell into silence as the evening deepened. Lights dimmed, staff whispered, and most of the animals had drifted off into sleep. But in one quiet room, time was still holding its breath. The 2 shepherds, now affectionately nicknamed Myra for the strong one and Luna for the frail one, lay curled together on clean blankets, the air thick with a strange mix of tension and peace. Myra hadn't left Luna's side all day. She stood when Luna stirred. She rested only when Luna did. The bond between them was more than just comforted, was commitment. Carla returned late that evening, unable to sleep, knowing what might unfold overnight. She had packed a thermos of tea, a small flashlight, and a pillow, though she knew she wouldn't be using it. As she entered the recovery room, Mira lifted her head and wagged her tail twice in soft acknowledgement. Luna shifted beside her, breathing faster now, her sides rising and falling with deeper effort. Carla crouched next to them, her eyes scanning Luna's movements. "It's time," she whispered. She stood quietly and texted the on-call vet. Then, she pulled a clean towel from the shelf and laid it beside them. Myra watched her every move, but stayed calm. She trusted Carla now because Luna did. Back at home, Emma stirred from sleep. She didn't know why she woke up, but something felt unfinished. She turned and glanced at the baby monitor, showing Noah fast asleep, his stuffed elephant tucked under one arm, and his toy rock lying near his pillow. She smiled softly. Then her gaze moved toward the window, where moonlight spilled through the glass. Her thoughts drifted to the dogs, to their eyes, their silence, and the way they had followed Noah, like he was a lighthouse. She considered driving to the shelter, but decided against it. They were in good hands. Still, she whispered a small prayer. Let them feel safe tonight. At the shelter, Luna had started to tremble. Carla sat cross-legged on the floor, Mira now lying with her head resting on Carla's knee, almost as if to say, "Help her like he helped us." The first tiny yelp came just before midnight, and then another. Luna was giving birth carefully, with Carla guiding gently and Myra watching every second. The first puppy came out small and slick, with eyes closed and paws twitching. Carla cleaned it quickly and tucked it near Luna's belly. The second followed moments later, then a third. Each tiny heartbeat brought new life into the room. Mira licked each pup after Carla placed them near their mother, as if counting and checking for herself. Her tail thumped softly with every new arrival. By 3 a.m., 5 pups had entered the world, tiny, fragile, and quiet. Luna lay weak but calm, her eyes fluttering as she nestled her newborns close. Carla leaned back, exhausted but glowing. She had witnessed dozens of births in her career, but never one like this. Never one with a guardian. Like Myra. Never one where love had been built from nothing but survival, and one toddler's fearless kindness. Carla gently stroked Myra's fur. "You did it," she whispered. "Both of you." Outside, the first hint of dawn crept across the sky. And inside that quiet shelter room, 7 new lives lay safe and warm. 2 mother dogs rested, no longer just survivors, but protectors of the next chapter. And though Noah still slept miles away, his quiet gift had carried through the night. A bond had been formed that would never be broken. Because sometimes, the smallest people start the biggest miracles. The days that followed the birth were gentle and quiet, the kind of soft recovery the world rarely allows but desperately needs. At the shelter, time seemed to slow down in that small recovery room, where Luna now nursed her 5 tiny pups. Each of them, still blind and barely larger than a folded sock, wriggled close to her belly in search of warmth and milk. She no longer trembled. Her body, though still fragile, held purpose. Mira remained ever near. She had become a silent sentinel, sleeping with one ear always perked, watching every visitor with thoughtful eyes. She didn't bark, didn't crouch, just watched, always aware, always alert. No one touched the pups without her approval, and even Carla, who she now trusted completely, moved gently when near them. Carla had set up a rotating schedule to check in on the little family every few hours. Staff took shifts, each of them quietly, marveling at how calm the room always felt, even with newborn puppies. There was something sacred about it. By the 3rd day, Luna finally accepted food without Mira, nudging her first. She even stood on shaky legs to stretch while the pups slept. Carla noticed and smiled. "She's healing," she said aloud, mostly to Myra, who sat just inches away with a calm gaze. Myra blinked slowly, as if she agreed. That same afternoon, Emma returned with Noah. This time, she didn't hesitate to walk into the recovery room. Noah tugged gently at her hand, eager to see his new friends. Carla greeted them both at the door with a quiet smile. "I think they've been waiting for you," she said. Inside, Myra stood up as soon as Noah entered. Her tail began to sway not wildly, but slowly, like a greeting reserved for someone she remembered. Noah let go of his mother's hand and walked straight to her, kneeling in front of the shepherd as if he had known her forever. Myra lowered her head, pressing her nose gently to his cheek. Then she stepped aside. Luna lay curled with her puppies beside her, and for the first time, she didn't shift away when a new human entered the room. She simply lifted her head and looked at Noah. Noah stared at the puppies for a long moment before whispering, "Babies." He sat cross-legged a few feet away, watching them squirm and squeak. He didn't try to touch, just watched, like a child staring at stars. Carla lowered herself next to him. "He knows how to be still," she said to Emma with a smile. "That's rare in kids his age." Emma nodded. "He's always quiet around animals, like he wants them to speak first." And somehow, they always did. Over the next week, the visits continued. Emma brought old towels, bags of food, and a small dog bed Mira had taken a liking to. Noah brought a new toy every time: plastic animals, a block, even a paper airplane that landed near the pups, and made Myra tilt her head in curiosity. But it wasn't just the gifts, or the routine that mattered. It was the trust. The room that had once held nothing but tension and survival had transformed into a place of healing. Little by little, Mira began to eat her meals with less hesitation. Luna walked more each day. And the pups, now stronger, began to yawn and stretch with tiny squeals, their legs wobbling as they learned how to crawl. Carla made a quiet note in her file. No aggression, no fear, only gratitude. And under that, she wrote something she hadn't in years. Recommended for string together. Because the story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about what came next, and what came next might be a home. Spring arrived quietly. The shelter grounds were touched with green again. Birds sang in the trees, and sunlight poured through the windows like gentle reminders that healing wasn't just a moment. It was a journey. Inside the recovery room, the puppies had grown into plump, wobbly little explorers. They had opened their eyes, taken their first steps, and discovered that tails were fun to chase. Luna watched them now with a calm pride, still thin but undeniably stronger. Myra remained close. Her maternal instincts extended to every yawn, whimper, and tumble. Carla stood near the door, a clipboard in hand. "They're almost ready," she whispered. Emma was beside her. She had come nearly every day since the birth. Brought toys, fresh towels, small donations, and always Noah. He had become part of the rhythm here. Myra would perk up the moment she heard his soft voice down the hall. The pups had begun following him around, like he was one of their own. Even Luna would relax fully when he sat nearby. Today, though, was different. Today was the meeting. Carla cleared her throat. "I've reviewed it with the board. We usually separate litters after 8 weeks. Adopt out the mothers sooner. But," she smiled, "this isn't a usual case. They've asked me if I think the family should stay together." Emma's eyebrows rose. All of them. 2 bonded mothers. 5 pups. 1 toddler, who may or may not have magical powers. Carla chuckled softly. "We've never done something like this. But we think we should." Emma didn't speak. Her heart was already answering. Carla turned to her. "Emma, would you consider being their foster? Or even more than that?" Emma blinked. Her hand went to her mouth. "I don't know if I have space. Or, your backyard is large enough," Carla said kindly. "I already checked. And your heart. That seems even bigger." Noah, sitting on the floor with 2 pups in his lap, and Myra resting beside him, suddenly looked up and grinned. "Home," he said, as if the answer had always been obvious. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "I never planned for this," she whispered. "No, one plans for family," Carla replied gently. "It just finds you." The following weekend, the little convoy made its way from the shelter to Emma's house. One by one, the pups were carried into the backyard, complete with a new playpen, shaded corner, and toys scattered across the grass. Luna walked in last, cautiously exploring every edge. Myra came beside her, checking everything twice, before finally resting in a sunny spot with a sigh. Noah ran across the grass and dropped his favorite toy rock in front of Myra. She pawed at it once, then let out a small bark, the first they'd ever heard from her. It wasn't loud. It was joy. Neighbors peeked over fences in amazement. No one had ever seen a family quite like this. Over the next few days, the house transformed. The pups learned how to climb stairs and steal socks. Myra took watch by the front door like a sentry. Luna became Noah's quiet shadow. And Emma stopped wondering if she could do it. She was already doing it. At night, after the pups had finally settled, and the air was soft with crickets, Emma would sit on the porch with Myra at her feet, and Luna nearby. She'd look at the stars and think back to that morning in the woods, the moment her son stepped into a cage and turned fear into trust. It wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of something lasting. And for the 2 dogs who had once been locked away and forgotten, and for the child who had offered a rock and a smile, and for the mother who had found her courage in the quietest of ways. This was no longer a story about survival. It was a forever kind of home.